Morning, North Point of View, Dr. Walter Kimses. Walter, how you doing?
Hey, how are you, Mark?
I'm good. It's December. We're 10 days before Christmas. Time to talk about sort of the year in review and maybe a glimpse into 2023. 2022 has been interesting, right? I mean, coming out of a pandemic that saw extraordinary challenges and opportunities, and now capital markets into some choppy water, looking into the first half of next year. What's the big takeaway for you from 2022?
The incredible error that the Federal Reserve is making. You know, we talked about this last year in December, and what we had anticipated was there would be a consumer goods industry recession, not an economic recession,
right.
Just that industry. People would stop buying 14 fishing rods and 12 bicycles and 3 exercycles and all of that stuff to do things from home, that as soon as people felt safe, whether they were vaccinated or they had caught coronavirus, it didn't matter. Once they felt safe about going out, that was it. Nobody wants to stay home. That's right. So people who read the data in 2020 misread it. They said, oh, people don't want to go to stores. No, they wanted to, they just couldn't.
Right.
So as soon as the doors started to open in 2021 and by earlier 2022, it was really clear that people didn't want to buy more sweatpants. They wanted to lose some weight, look better, go out, go to the restaurant, go to Disney World. And that's what we saw.
Right.
And so all of a sudden we see big retailers, oh, well, we have too much inventory. And it was the big retailers who had the money to pay $30,000, $40,000 to move a 40-foot container.
Right, and those numbers are back to the trend line now, right? 3,400 from 35,000, right?
Well, if we talk to our friend Rick Abelson, he does a lot of procurement to help out his clients, and he's paying below what he was paying in 2019 to move a 40-foot, at least from China. Right. So you're absolutely right. It has dropped back to the line, and if you know what you're doing, you can do better than where things were.
Right.
So then we said purchase orders for stuff coming from Asia would start getting cut around the first quarter of this year. And that's what happened. We had all of these retailers say, well, we have too much inventory and we're going to manage our inventory better and we're going to reduce some of our real estate holdings and we're going to cut some employees. And okay, so that was good. The problem is that if you decide today that you need to cut your purchase orders from Asia, you can't do anything for the next 7 months. You can only cut stuff that would arrive in 7 months or 8 months or 9 months because you place an order with your contractor in China, within a week or maybe 2, they've already bought the raw materials.
Sure.
If you cut that order at that point, you'll never be able to use them again. They're not there to take raw material inventory risk. They're there to take the risk of serving you. So March to October, about 7 months. And what happens? The volumes start falling off the cliff. In the West Coast, part of the fall off the cliff is the fear that the ILWU was going to finally have a strike. They made a mistake. They should have done it in June or July, but the
fear is
didn't.
still there, and the result is diminishing cargo flow through the West Coast.
Exactly. So the other thing you use the ILWU for these days is to go chase tumbleweeds across the container yards. Okay. I'm going to get in trouble for that.
Do they have tumbleweeds in the port of LA?
They probably do now. So anyways, we said 7 months later, we'd see a transportation recession. What have we seen in the last month or two? And container rates falling off a cliff, back down below where they used to be in 2019. The volumes, there are no ships waiting to get in the West Coast. Berth utilization looks like it's 50%, which is really low for the number of terminals they have. The East Coast, you still have some ships waiting, but a lot of folks had to deviate their cargo. You know, they were concerned, what's the ILWU going to do? So we had the freight recession. So consumer goods recession, not an economic recession.
Right.
freight recession, and then we would be okay, except the Federal Reserve thinks that we need to control our demand. Food prices are through the roof. Oh, is that because we've become big obese pigs and we're eating 20% more? Or is it because last year or this year we had the Mississippi River drop to its lowest ever? Other rivers dropped to really low levels, not only in North America, but Asia and Europe. Food production in the Northern Hemisphere this year has been way below what was needed.
As my 19-year-old daughter said, it's a supply issue, not a demand issue.
Exactly. So she gets it, but this Powell nincompoop, and he's like, no, I'm going to be like Paul Volcker. I'm going to be like Paul Volcker in 1982. Yo, dude, 1982, we had a demand problem. That's what Volcker had to go after. You're not Paul Volcker. You will never be Paul Volcker. And what he's trying to do is to solve, yes, there is strong demand, but there's very, very weak supply. It's the weakest I've ever seen in my life. And I was a macroeconomist like these people, Mark. I get it. I used to sit in that helicopter 50,000 feet over the planet looking down and trying to guess what was happening because there were so many clouds I couldn't see. Well, 16 years ago, I moved to 0 feet. I look up to the economic structure, and it is so obvious. Anyways, I sent a column, an op-ed to the Wall Street Journal. I hope they have the guts to publish it. But
they
basically, no, they probably won't. I'm not anticipating that they will at all. But the reality is that the Fed has made a big mistake. So as we come out of this year, we see that the 10-year minus the 3-month yield, government bond yields, that spread is negative, meaning the yield curve is inverted.
Yeah.
Now, if you look back in history, we've never had an inversion without a recession following that. But the time between the inversion and the recession is variable. It can be almost immediate, and in past recessions, it can be almost a year. So we don't know when that happens. But to be smart, we also look at, I don't care that this thing has worked 4 times in a row in the last 4 recessions, because that's what people like to look at. Been following the credit spreads. The BAA, Moody's BAA minus the 10-year yield has been going up. So that's a flashing indicator that we're going into a recession. But I haven't seen the AAA from the Moody's yields spread over treasuries go up at all. In fact, if anything, it's been horizontal. So what that's telling me is until I see the AAA minus the 10-year yield begin to go up, I think it's premature to time when that recession would occur.
I think as we sort of take a look at 2023, what it seems to me is a fair amount of uncertainty in the first half of next year, but with some real opportunities probably in the second half of the year.
I agree with you completely. It is just like this year. The first half was great. The second was bad. Next year, the first half is bad. The second half would be good.
Hey, let's do this, Walter. I think we're running into sort of our limit on time for this session. Mm-hmm. Great to catch up. Obviously, recap 2022. Yep. Fed creates unnecessary issues, right?
Right.
And the solution is pretty simple. Whether we can get there or not, it's another thing, right?
That's right. Listen, they're creating opportunities for those of us who know to run into the into the chaos, not run away from it.
Yeah. Well, Walter, it's great to catch up. This is a great time of year. Appreciate being with you. Thanks, Walter.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mark.
All right.
Merry
See you
Christmas.
guys. Merry Christmas.